I think I'll be going online now. Yeah, starting. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I think I'm back. Let's see if everyone's here. Um, you, you, चालू is this only bad speed? 50% frames dropped, and the speed is going to be an issue. Maybe if I reduce the. Okay. I don't know how well you guys can see this. I think the quality would be kinda bad. Frames would be dropping. Uh, really sorry if that's happening. Internet is annoying. We've already covered it. Now let's go to loops. Yeah. Now I'll be going into loops. Loops are basically to um, do a set of commands again and again. Um, so say you had a list of numbers. So let's call it numbers, and let's put in numbers 1, 2, 5, 6, 9, 32, and I want it total equal to 0 for n in numbers, total total plus 1 plus n total. 55. So yes, Vivek, loops are very similar like Java. I don't think there's too much of a difference except some basic syntax. Now, this is a very simple loop where for n in numbers, that is for each value in the list numbers or any iterable. So you could use tuples, you could use sets. It's not an issue. If I convert this into a set, the answer won't change. These are all known as iterables. They have a collection of values in some sort of order, not necessarily some sort of order, just it's a collection of values. That's why you can go over each one of the value and iterate over them. So each value from this list or set or tuple or whatever you create, even dictionaries is fine. You can get the value and add it into total and then print the total. So say you wanted to use a dictionary, that's not an issue either. I think. Is it supposed to be like this, or I have no idea what it's doing. Okay. For n numbers, I think what we can do is this. So the problem with dictionaries is that it gives you the keys, it iterates over keys, not values. So I'm getting all the keys and I was trying to figure out how to get values as well. I think this is the best jugaad we can do right now. Yeah, that works. So just you have the key, so get the value from the dictionary. Anyways, dictionaries are hash tables, so it doesn't have to look for it. It immediately gets the value. Um, as you can see, the body of the loop has to be indented. It indentation allows multiple lines as well. It's not like एक ही line हो सकती है. So you could do that total there and print n as well. So it now will print all the keys and give me the total. So Ankit J 41. Yeah, that, that's what loops are. You can also of course do the simpler C में जैसे लूप की आदत थी तो for I in range 0 to I think this will be a little more similar to what you're used to in C or any other like Java also. Yeah, there we go. Print all the values and the total. That's fine too. Okay. I don't think there'll be too many doubts in this code because जितना मेरे को समझ में आ रहा है, all of you guys have had some basic programming background. The only issue is like if statements for loops तक तो सीख लेते हो and you guys are a bit confused about the basics themselves, so you never get confident. So I think this part it doesn't. I don't really need to go into too many examples to explain what a loop is. Is that fine? I think you guys are understanding. I'll keep that example also there. Uh, this example also you guys will have. any doubt in both of these codes, like the iterating over a dictionary and iterating over a list or a set of numbers? So you can of course also do this. Won't make any difference. So two ways to do it. Any doubt in any of the three types of loops I just showed you? Are you guys online? Couldn't understand loop. Okay. I assume then you've never done a loop. So what a loop does is it repeats the statements inside it again and again and again. How many times? That you have to put up here. So just like so when we did if, this was the syntax, right? So you do if and then you put a condition and then you put what to do inside it. So but when you're doing a loop, the look of it is similar. You put a for, you put something, and then you put a bunch of code, and then it repeats the code based on this. So for loops, you just have to give it some sort of iterable. So numbers is an iterable, it's a list. You can iterable means you can go over a bunch of values one by one. So it has a bunch of values over which you can go one by one. So for each value inside numbers, it will do these things. We also have another loop called a while loop. So while I greater than 0, Python, I don't need brackets. So this is a while loop which just checks for a single condition whether it's true or false. So a for loop expects a iterable and um, a value to assign to each value of the iterable and each iteration, but um, a variable to basically a variable to store the current iterations value that we have taken out of the iterable. But in while loop we just give it a condition true or false. जब तक condition true है तब तक करते रहो बार 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 बार. So don't never forget to put some sort of update statement for the condition. Otherwise, if I forget this guy, this code will go on forever and forever, which we don't want. There we go. So it just prints 54321 because as soon as um, the value of I becomes 0, this loop is not this condition is not true anymore, so it will not enter here, it will not print anything. Instead it will go outside the loop and do finished instead. Were you guys able to understand? Is there a simpler method for the loop, or we have to use the syntax of C? No, so this is a for loop, this is a for loop, this is a for loop, and this is a while loop. So the syntax is slightly different from C, but yes, this is the basic idea of a loop. Like there isn't anything vastly different available in Python that makes life very 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 easy. So Right. Break and continue. I think. Uh, do we need to do those? I mean, okay. Another way we could do this is just put true here. So this loop has basically been told to go on forever. But then I could put a condition in here. If I equals 0, break. And what break does, it's like break out of the loop. Don't continue this loop anymore. Or if I percentage 2 equal to 0, print I, or rather, right. So now what this program would now do is only display even numbers up to 0. So starting from 5, it will be like, okay, I got reduced. If the current value is not divisible by 2, that is the remainder on dividing by 2 comes out to be 1, then do not continue, do not even read these 3 lines, just go to the next iteration of the loop. That's what continue does. And break is like completely stop going into the loop, don't even go to the next iteration, just completely come out of the loop, directly jump to finished. So there's examples in here as well, for in the slides for you to see. And list comprehensions, right? Okay, did you guys understand this much though? I think there aren't any doubts. So now list comprehensions are fairly straightforward. If you've understood the concept of loops and conditions, I think list comprehensions will be a breeze. If you haven't, then list comprehensions bhi nahi samjhega. I don't think I need to write different code. This is fairly straightforward. So let's just pick this up only. That's supposed to be the output. So yeah. So what list comprehensions do is they let you modify an iterable and return a list. So what it does, it's like a single line for loop. So for num in numbers, if the number is greater than 0, then return num square. That is, put num square inside the new list that we have called squares. So first it sees 21. It's like, is 21 greater than 0? It is. So 21 square is 441. Let's put that inside squares. Minus 17. Is that greater than 0? It's not. So let's not do anything. And 9. If 9 is greater than 0, which it is, 9 square 81 is put inside squares. And then when we print squares, we get 441 and 81. This is just a shorthand way of writing a simple loop. So what the Python developers realized was that in C, a lot of times we were creating loops and we were Like they had in C, we also had to declare this as a variable. So you first create num as a variable, and then you do I equal to 0, I less than something something, and then like there were 2 3 lines that were required to do a very simple task like this one, where you were iterating over stuff, and based on a condition you were returning some modified version of the value. So um, but this was something that was done a lot of times, and you had to write a lot of nonsense code and create a bunch of nonsense variables, and it was just honestly annoying to do that again and again. So they realized, well, let's just have a shorter syntax to do it. So this exact same thing could also have been done by doing this. So squares equal to empty list for num in numbers, squares dot append, if num greater than 0, squares dot append num star num. Of course, this thing is both shorter to type and easier to understand. So just give me num square for each number in the numbers if the number is greater than 0. Like it flows easily, so when you read the line you understand it immediately, and you don't have to write 4 lines of code. So that's half the that's like Python was created to be quick and easy to do. So this is just one of the niche features that is honestly very useful, and we'll be using it in Django a lot if you create even slightly complicated websites. I'm not sure if we'll do it in the tutorial itself, but if you know how to do this, trust me, it's very 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 useful. Now comes some more important but theoretical stuff, that is functions, classes, and objects. Um, I'll have to go and like explain a lot of things here, so I need to know for sure that you've understood everything before this. So please tell me if you have any doubts. If uh, we can, tomorrow's session is honestly not too much time consuming, so I could spend half an hour tomorrow instead and do Python, or maybe extend the lecture right now and do a little extra today. But we need to ensure that you've understood everything up till now. Okay, since there's no doubts, I'll just assume you're done. So, functions then. Uh, Functions, it's a simple concept if you think of it this way. What if you had to do a set of code, but you're not sure how many times you'll be doing it? It's not like I'm not talking about a loop, but rather reusability of code itself. um, how do I explain? I think an example would be best. So right, okay, theory is nice. So a function is a block of organized reusable code that is used to perform a specific action or a task. So say you want to calculate some specific thing a about some value. Say you want to check if it's a perfect square or not. So you should there is no direct way to check whether it is a perfect square or not. You'll have to write a bunch of code, and it's possible that at multiple instances in your program, uh, it's possible that in at multiple instances in your program you'll have to do the same operation again and again, but not like a loop. Like you don't have a list of values that you have to apply that function to, right? You need to um, do it at intermittent places. So there you create a function. It's basically just a block of code. It's nothing else. You can basically divide your program into logical modules that interact with each other so that it just makes a lot more sense and you know how to read it. So say I create a function that calculates a factorial. So there we go. Uh, okay, so the range function, the way it works is it goes from the starting value to one less than the ending value. So it's like up to this value, but not including this value. So that's why, since I also wanted 5 to be multiplied, I did this. I made it n plus 1 so that n is also inclusive. And then factorial of 5, when we're calculating, it's 120, which is the correct answer. Factorial just like factorial of 5 would be 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So this is what it does. So it's possible that say you wanted to calculate PNC. I think most of you guys are either already in 11th 12th or have cleared 11th 12th, so you might know what um, a combination is. So say I wanted to do phi C3, so I'll just do this factorial 3 times factorial 2, and then this will have to be in brackets because it's being divided. So as you can see, it isn't technically a loop. I could have done a loop to calculate the factorial of 5 and 3 and 2 and then use those three variables and done this, but it's much simpler and logical this way, wherein you've abstracted the entire logic of how to calculate a factorial inside this named section of code called a function. The name of the function that I've given is factorial, which returns a value. So a function is basically an abstraction of what a computer is, right? What does a computer do? It takes an input, does some stuff, gives an output. Function does the exact same thing. It takes some input that is written on top here, executes some statements, and returns a value. So that's like the most basic definition of what a function is. I'll just see. So this is the syntax, of course. Uh, you have to pass it values out here called arguments on which it works. So here I've sent it the values 5, 3, and 2 each time the function is called. This is a function call when you write the name along with actual values that have to be passed. So first it calls the function factorial using the value of 5. So it calculates the factorial of 5 and returns that. Then we called it with the value 3, so it calculates the factorial of 3 and returns that. And then for 2, and then we've just calculated some PNC. So the return statement is technically optional, but in this case, if I remove the return statement, it'll be like no values being returned. What do I print? So I won't remove it. But you could have a function that just prints stuff, or it just, it's just a utility function that doesn't really give you back a value. So uh, in those cases, you don't really need to mention a return type. For example, Gmail वाला फिर से बंद कर दिया मैंने. ठीक है, मरने दो. uh, so that's how you call a function. You give the function name along with actual values for the arguments. Now there's also the idea of keyword arguments. So say you do this. So factorial is actually not a good example for this. So let's just let this be and create a new file. Or बोल दो file की भी क्या जरूरत है. You've understood what functions do. Look at this. So here sometimes order matters. Like if this were subtract function instead of add function, in which order you sent x and y would matter, because answer positive या negative आता है उसके हिसाब से. But the person sending the values might not always know. Like if you're doing subtract, he might not be sure कि पहले छोटा वाला डालना है या बड़ा वाला डालना है to get a positive answer. So there we can use keyword arguments. So he would know, okay, x is supposed to be the bigger one, or instead of x you could just call it bigger and smaller, and you could be like bigger equal to 6 and smaller equal to 2, so that he gets a positive answer, or bigger equal to 2 and smaller equal to 6 to get a negative answer. So that just makes it easier for him and for us. And yeah, okay. And you can also provide default values in the function, so that way, so this is how it's very different from uh, C, as in you could do n equal to 5 here. So if I don't provide a value to it, it will default to 5 and it will still give me the same answer. So this is like a default value. So it's used where in a lot of times the default value could be set as none, or something that makes it clear that nothing has been passed, but still there isn't an error. Like um, how do I give an example? So yeah, I think the none example was good, or my send email example. So say def send mail from equal to Ankit, and the 2 is expected. Let's put it later only. That's the issue. I think from is a keyword. Uh, so here the reason I have provided it like this, or to make it more logical. So now if I do not mention a from, like if I'm like send mail to xyz at example.com, it will just send a mail from my account to this person, provided I actually write the code to send the email here, which I just didn't. I just put a comment there, so ideally it will do nothing. um, and let's print something in there instead. So mail from, mail to. Yeah, so as you can see, it sends an email from my account to this person's account. And if I actually mention that no, I want to send it from abc at example.com to xyz at example.com, then it will send it from there instead. So this is quite useful, having default values, so that you don't have to. So if it's a very common value that people might put again and again, which again none is a very common option, or it's additional settings, for example. So an inbuilt function that exists is sorted. What it does is it sorts a list, and that has a option reverse equal to true karo, so then it gives me decreasing order, otherwise it gives me increasing order. Did that work? Yeah. So reverse equal to true किया तो ये हुआ, and if I remove that optional argument, 136. So for a novice or someone new to using this function, they don't even need to know that the reverse equal to true वाला option exists. They just know okay sorted को list देना होता है, वो sort करके देता है, and they don't need to know anything else. So any complicated or high level options or whatnot you want to provide to any user of the function, they are available, but it's up to you to use them. I'll create a sorting का ये new file, paste. There you go. Okay, and I mean I'm pretty sure it'll work. No reason not to. Yeah, it works. Taken. So that is basically the idea of a function. You can, and this is like oop. Yeah, kinda like oop. So that's the basic idea of a function. It's an abstraction of a set of code that you can send some values to and expect some values. It may or may not return a value. It's not necessary to return a value. We did optional arguments. We did named arguments. Uh, so yeah, I think that's it. Anything else? I don't think we need to cover anything else on functions. Global keyword scope. Okay, makes sense. One tiny tidbit that I forgot to mention, that a function owns its all the variables that are created inside it, but that's true for any indentation level. So I have created this variable called fact at indentation level 1, right? It's one tab inside. So anything outside it would not know it exists. So if I try to do print fact out here, it would have absolutely zero idea what fact is, because fact was declared inside, not outside. So that is the concept of local scope. You can create a global variable outside and use it inside. So say I create fact equal to 0 out here, and then I do print fact. Well, now it won't give me an issue because fact is available globally. And that didn't cause a clash with this guy, because this guy is only available locally inside the function factorial and not available outside the function factorial. So that's the concept of global and local scope. Non-local, no point going into it. uh, ठीक है. Additional global keyword also exists. Again, that's not all that important. Now, classes and objects, I don't think we need to really go into much of coding for these, because you can just take a look at the slide and you'll understand. But the theory is very, very important, and I think I should cover that instead. Code, you can just look at the slides and I think you'll understand. And honestly, there isn't anything I could do different from this. This is like one of the best examples I could give. So, what a class and an object are. I'll be starting functions. अब तक समझा है ना पहले? Any doubts in functions? So then we can wind up in 5 minutes. I think there aren't any doubts. Live streaming चालू है ना? हाँ, चालू है. ठीक है. So I'll start with classes and objects then. Uh, Great. So now, till now we had done very basic data types that stored a simple value, but you must have heard that a bunch of games have been created in Python, or websites are being created in Python that we're gonna learn in 2-3 days. So we know that anything that is stored there, uh, in say like a game or like a website, is much more complicated than these simple things. A game actually has images, it has 3D models, it has a whole bunch of attributes. So say you're playing a simple tank shooter game. So different types of tanks would have different speeds, acceleration, shooting rate, etc., etc. And all those things would have to be stored about each individual tank. So nobody is going to sit and create like tank 1 underscore speed equal to 5, tank 1 underscore speed equal to 10. Like nobody sat and typed all that nonsense in, right? It's very stupid to do it that way. Instead, we create classes and objects. So the basic idea of this is that a real world entity, such as a tank in the game, has its attributes such as speed and whatever, all those color and the image that is there, all those are stored as attributes. Those are static values related to it. And behaviors, so some sort of functions, that is, if I press the arrow key it should move ahead, so accelerate function will be there. There will be a function to shoot, so if I press the space bar, a new bullet has to be spawned in the direction in which the tank is facing, and it has to start moving ahead. So that is a behavior of the tank, that it spawns a bullet. So that will a function related to that has to be created, and so on and so forth. So all the attributes of the real world entity are mapped onto variables, and behaviors are mapped onto functions. So a class is basically a blueprint for objects. So all tanks would have a fire function. They would all have these variables. Just the value stored inside the variable will be different. But the structure of what a tank is like would be the same. So hence a class is just a blueprint for the object. The idea of a tank is a class, but each individual tank in the game is an object. So it's basically just a custom data type with a defined set of values and functionality. So each object is considered an instance of a class. Instance, the word basically means that um, the all the values of the attributes of that class have been actually assigned some actual values. So uh, that becomes an object. So I'll show you an example. So here I've defined a class car, and I've said that there's a model and a brand. So as you can see, I can give it default values. So uh, they can be used. Uh, and then there is a function in it. This is called a constructor. What it does is that it creates a new object of the class. So whenever you do this, you create a new variable name equal to class name, and then in brackets you pass it the arguments required for the constructor. It will call the constructor and create one object of this class and save it inside my car. So I'll copy this exact code and run it for you and explain what's going on. Control V, save, file name. Oop, So what we're doing right now is called object-oriented programming. What we had done before this, like everything before this, was functional programming, wherein there was um, only functions existed, classes had not been created. So C programming actually does not have the concept of classes in it. So to model any real world object, you actually have to create variables for each of them, and it's honestly very annoying. But with high level programming languages like Java and Python, which are considered object oriented, you can create classes, objects, instances, whatever, all these things, and um, you can model real world objects as well as abstract objects. So say a user of a website, his username, his password, all those things, even in Django, which is what we'll be using for web development on day 3, uh, we create classes and objects of those. uh, of each user there's an object created, and user itself, like the idea of a user, is a class. So right now I'll just run this code. Python py class car invalid syntax क्यों भाई ऐसा चाहिए क्या? Or is it not supposed to be capital? It's not supposed to be capital. There we go. My bad. Not supposed to be capital. Expected unindented. Oh, I forgot to indent all this. That works. Okay. So now the advantage of this is you can do this. Import mc equal to up.car, and I give it, say, Honda City. So mc dot model city, like I'm just printing it. So what I'm using right now is the Python shell. I'm just demonstrating how, now that you've gone into object oriented, this is not just a script, it can be combined with others. So here now I could just be like import Oop, my car. Oop dot car. Print my car. So the Python shell lets you do basic Python stuff. You can just do a equal to 5, b equal to 7, print a plus b, and it'll do that. Like basic Python code can be written in here as well, directly. So that's an option, or you could, of course, write a Python file and then run that. So Python call, and that works. And then here we can add a function as well. So as I said, classes also have functions. Def um, so this is a no, wait, I won't mention that.